We've heard the phrase, leave a dent on the universe, or leave the world a better place than when you came here, or serve others. Yes, serve, serve, serve. In a sense, be a missionary, do good. Be an altruist, you might say. Put others before yourself. But what would one's motivations be then? For instance, Ernest Becker, around 1970, wrote a Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Denial of Death. And Sheldon Solomon, amongst a few others, later picked up on this theme, his being in Canada, and talked of those who wish to leave a legacy if they're not going to be death-denying completely. I think then of Andrew Carnegie, for instance, leaving his name as per library systems, donations to many libraries being established, and Carnegie Hall, for instance. Was his motivation then to leave the world a better place, strictly speaking, or to leave his name better emplaced? And even, was this for the purposes of leaving a legacy, of having done good again, or that he was some kind of a mini-god, we might say? What was the motivation? I do know he spent the last years of his life very, very depressed. I would say very bummed out. And one more point here, and I think it's rather an important one, at least in my mind. If we do desire to see people suffer less, and we take action upon that in any way, shape, or form, to the extent we have gifts in that direction, and are not so tied down compared to some, then again, why do we do this? Why would we want to do it? Do we even thus think we could possibly make a dent on the universe? For instance, the analogy, why throw a starfish back in the ocean if there's millions of starfish left on the beach? Do we really think our dent in the universe is going to make any difference, even collectively? There is the adage of the idea behind the topic, the title of a book. For instance, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Also, some might say that despite whatever mankind does, the universe is going to disappear into a black hole, I don't know, some billion years from now anyway. No matter how much dents positively the entire universe could make collectively or individually upon the universe, will it ultimately make any difference then in the very long run? And if not, why even try? What's the point? What's the point in helping anyone else other than ourselves trying to see mankind advance and leave this dent on the universe thus? Well, this will sound quite unusual to some people, but my question then is, why not do good for others? Why not try to promote less pain in others? Even if in the cosmic sense, the universal sense, it isn't perhaps going to make a hill of beans difference in the whole scheme of things. Why not do this for the purpose that will blow some people's minds? Because we have nothing better to do with our time, our resources in general, when we get up to the point we go to bed. In other words, if we have come to a point where we have conquered almost all fears, call it catastrophizings in my mind if you will, if we've conquered almost all anger, and if we've conquered almost all guilt in our lives, we have thus a certain kind of serenity, and thus, you might say, our needs in living are rather met. Well then, what better do we have to do with our time than focus on others' needs, others' pain, even if what we do might not make a hill of beans difference in the long term and in the universe itself, especially if the universe does quote-unquote blow up into a black hole, so to speak, anyway. Or Earth goes the way of the Titanic, and who knows when. Noting, by the way, that Stephen Hawking, who wrote A Brief History of Time, the man in the wheelchair with ALS, who passed away a few years ago, had a speech synthesizer use, was using a speech sympathizer, said we have about 1,000 years to get off this planet or we will go extinct. Well, what if it's much less than that? And it's not an option to get off this planet. Why even try to help anyone or do anything then? Again, my contention being, well, what better at a certain point in time for certain individuals do we have to do with our time? If we've thus conquered most all fears, anger, and guilt, are we just supposed to sleep our time away? Are we just supposed to while it away, having the equivalent of a Thanksgiving dinner every day of every week of every year? That would be called, I think, hedonism. Not just the seeking of pleasure as per Freud's pleasure principle, but just plain escapism, almost like going to bed and just sleeping away all one's time. I've seen some individuals do this. My point then, do we act because we really want to see the universe a better place, our country a better place, our world a better place, our grandchildren's lives a better existence? Or are we doing so because we wish to perpetuate our name in lights, even to the extent of some thinking, oh, they were a god, they pulled a rabbit out of a hat, they were a magician. Or, boy, they sure were altruistic when most people aren't. Or do we wish to strive to some extent to help others because more honestly, perhaps, just perhaps, we have nothing better to do with our time if we have, quote, our physiological or emotional safety needs met, or our pain points met emotionally, of fear, anger, and guilt. I think most people will never get to the point where they've conquered all of these three kingpin focus points completely. But if they did, what better would they have to do with their time than to focus then on others? Not discussing then whether it will have any significant outcome in the cosmic, the overall sense, and forever and ever and ever, trillions of years, shall we say. But again, simply because they have nothing better to do with their time, so why not? Regardless of the overall impact. Why not throw that starfish in the ocean, regardless of whether it's going to make a difference in the whole scheme of things if there are millions of other starfish on the ocean? If we don't, in fact, what better, again, are we going to do with our time, and might we even feel jaded, saying, well, who cares about others' feelings anyway? So there's an additional concern. If we don't do something to help others, regardless of the long-term impact or overall significance in numbers, might we become jaded, and thus in turn feel less happy ourselves. Some thoughts here, somewhat unusual perhaps to some to think of when we say, leave the world a better place, or sing your song, or help others, serve others. Is it so others feel less pain? How many? And For how long? Or is it because ultimately, at some point in time, we say, very honestly perhaps, "Oh, what good is it to buy another bottle of wine, to have another Thanksgiving dinner, to sleep, to indulge, to escape? We may call these the finer things in life, blessings, but at some point in time, I think we have to wake up perhaps and say, well, maybe a lot of that is just escapism, not enjoying things. And then have to say, if I don't need this escapism, well, what better do I have to do with my time than simply to observe, to comment, and to do what I can with the realization it might not make a hill of beans in the overall sense any more than helping a bacteria in the ground when there are a lot of bacteria everywhere. And I don't mean to say people are bacteria, or I'm talking again also the concept of the starfish and helping one starfish when there are millions that will not get helped. What would be the point? Maybe the point is, what better are you going to do with your time? Sleep on the beach next to the starfish? If you don't need to sleep anymore, because you don't need to escape anger, fear, and guilt. If you don't need to sleep on the beach next to the starfish, why not help a few starfish? What better do you have to do with your time? Again, people, starfish, bacteria, whatever. Maybe it's animals for us, animal rights groups. What impact is it going to make in the overall sense might not be the question at all. And we might be fooling ourselves to think we can make a big impact. But again, for the umpteenth time, I guess, to say humorously, what better do we have to do with our time? Are we supposed to even do what the Jainists have sometimes done in India? When they feel they've reached enlightenment, they self-end their lives, some of them. They feel, well, there's nothing more to be had in life. Is that the ultimate end then, if we've conquered most all anger, fear, and guilt? Are we just supposed to sleep away our lives, drink away our lives, party away our lives, or just end our lives like some of the Jainists tout as an option that they act on sometimes to some extent? Seems to me better to throw that starfish in the ocean rather than end your life saying, well, what's the point in life anyway? I achieved nirvana on this planet, so I guess it's all over. There's nothing more to be had. I'll just end my life. Seems a rather ironic thing. Food for thought here.